Alien girl left unclothed and pelted with garbage, until the human covered her with his new coat. The alien girl stood alone in the middle of the open market square, her bare feet pressed against the cold metal floor. The air smelled of waste, old food, and burned fuel. Above her, tall buildings rose like silent judges, their screens flashing advertisements that promised comfort, safety, and unity, lies she now understood very well. Her name was Sereny, though no one here cared to know it. Her thin clothing had been torn away moments earlier. What little fabric remained hung uselessly from her hands as she tried, again and again, to cover herself. Her skin, a soft shade of blue-gray, trembled in the cold air. But the cold was nothing compared to the heat of humiliation burning inside her chest. Garbage flew through the air. A crushed container hit her side. Rotting food splashed against her leg. Something sharp cut her shoulder and she hissed in pain but did not scream. Screaming only encouraged them. The crowd circled her like predators. Dozens of different species, all united by one thing: hate, refugee filth. Her mother had taught her that once long ago, before fire fell from the sky and her world burned. She had not fought in any war. She had not harmed anyone. She had fled with nothing but fear and hope. But here, hope was treated like a crime. Someone stepped forward and threw a bag of refuse directly at her chest. It burst open, covering her in scraps and foul-smelling liquid. The crowd roared with approval. She stumbled backward, nearly losing her balance. For a brief moment, she thought about letting herself fall, about staying on the ground and closing her eyes. Maybe then it would end faster, but she stayed standing, not because she was strong, because she was tired of losing everything. Then, through the noise, through the insults and laughter, a voice spoke. Enough. It was not loud. It did not carry anger, but it carried certainty. The crowd hesitated, just for a heartbeat. At the edge of the square stood a human. He had arrived on the station only that morning. His name was Elias Ward, an engineer from Earth assigned to repair power conduits on the outer ring. He wore a dark, new coat, one he had purchased before leaving his ship, thinking the station climate might be colder than expected. He had not expected this. Elias had stopped when he saw the crowd. At first he thought it was entertainment. Then he saw the garbage flying. Then he saw her, unclothed, shaking, alone. Something in his chest tightened painfully. He started walking. "Hey, human," someone muttered. "Mind your own business." Elias did not slow down. Another piece of trash flew, but this time Elias caught it midair. The crowd murmured in surprise. "She's an enemy," someone shouted. "Her kind killed millions." Elias stepped between Sereny and the crowd. He did not look back at her yet. He kept his eyes on them. "She's one person," he said calmly, "and right now she's being attacked. She deserves it." "No one deserves this," Elias replied. Without another word, he removed his coat. The motion was simple, natural. He turned slightly and gently placed the coat around Sereny's shoulders, wrapping it fully around her small frame. The fabric was thick and warm. It smelled faintly of metal and soap. Her breath caught in her throat. No one had touched her kindly since she fled her planet. Elias adjusted the coat so it covered her completely. His movements were careful, respectful, as if he were afraid of causing her more pain. "You're safe," he said quietly, though he wasn't sure if it was true yet. Sereny looked up at him. Her eyes were large, dark, and filled with disbelief. A human protecting her. The crowd reacted instantly. Shouts replaced laughter. "Get out of the way." But humans had never needed weapons to stand their ground. "She's not hurting anyone," Elias said. "You are." Security drones began to descend from above, alerted by the rising disturbance. Their lights flashed red and blue, casting sharp shadows across the square. The crowd grumbled, angry but cautious. One by one they stepped back, not because they felt shame, but because they feared consequences. When the square finally cleared, Sereny realized her hands were gripping the coat so tightly her fingers hurt. Her legs felt weak. Elias turned to her. Up close, he noticed how thin she was, how her shoulders trembled, how hard she was trying not to cry. "Can you walk?" he asked gently. She nodded, though she wasn't sure. They walked away together slowly. The sounds of the market faded behind them. Only then did Sarani speak. "Why help me?" she asked in broken trade language. Elias thought for a moment. "Because I saw someone in pain," he said, "and I could do something about it," she swallowed. "My people, they say humans are dangerous." Elias gave a small, sad smile. "Sometimes we are, mostly when we see injustice and decide not to ignore it." They did not notice the cameras mounted above the square, or the way station networks automatically archive the footage. A single human removing his coat, a single alien girl being protected. Across the galaxy, eyes would soon watch that moment again and again. And for the first time in a long while, fear would not be directed at humans. It would be directed at those who learned what happens when humans choose compassion and refuse to look away. The corridor outside the market was quiet, but the silence felt heavy. The bright noise of the square faded behind them, replaced by the low hum of station engines and distant footsteps. Sarani walked beside the human, her body still tense, her hands holding the coat tightly around herself as if it might disappear. Elias slowed his pace so she could keep up. "You don't have to rush," he said gently. She nodded, though her eyes stayed fixed on the floor. Every sound made her flinch. Every passing shadow felt like danger. They reached a small maintenance alcove near the outer ring. It was clean, unused, and shielded from the main traffic paths. Elias paused there. "Sit," he said, pointing to a bench. "Just for a minute." Sarani hesitated, then carefully sat down. The metal was cold, but the coat protected her. Her breathing slowly steadied. Elias stood nearby, unsure what to do with his hands. He felt angry, angrier than he had been in years, but he kept it buried. She didn't need his anger, she needed calm. "What happened back there?" he asked softly. She was silent for a long moment. "They recognized my markings," she finally said. "My species. They blamed me for an old war, one I was not born to see." Elias frowned. "And the station allowed it." She gave a small, broken laugh. "The station allows many things if no one important complains." Elias clenched his jaw. Above them, unseen, the station network replayed the footage from the market. Security feeds auto-flagged unusual events. A human intervening in a public punishment was rare enough to trigger alerts. Within minutes, the video spread. Dock workers paused mid-task. Merchants replayed the clip on small screens. Station officials watched from private offices, their expressions tightening as the image of Elias placing his coat around Sarani looped again and again. A human had broken protocol and reminded the galaxy of something it preferred to forget. Back in the alcove, Elias crouched down so he was at eye level with Sarani. "Do you have somewhere safe to go?" he asked. She shook her head. "They burned my shelter last cycle. I move often." Elias took a slow breath. "Then you can come with me, at least for tonight." Her eyes widened. "I would bring trouble." Elias smiled slightly. "Trouble seems to find me anyway." She studied his face, searching for deception. She found none. "Thank you," she whispered. They walked again, this time toward the human residential section. The station design changed there, simpler walls, fewer decorations, more practical lighting. Humans liked function over beauty. Sarani noticed that. "It feels honest," she said quietly. Elias glanced at her. "That's one word for it." When they reached his assigned quarters, Elias keyed the door open. The room was small but clean. Tools were stacked neatly against one wall. A narrow bed sat beside a window that looked out into space. Sarani froze at the doorway. "I can stay near the door," she said quickly. "I will not take much space." Elias shook his head. "You're not a burden." He handed her a folded thermal blanket and a simple station garment he kept as a spare. "You can change behind the partition," he said, turning his back to give her privacy. She hesitated, then did as he said. For the first time since her escape from her homeworld, Sereny wore clean clothing that was freely given. When she stepped out, Elias turned back. She looked different, still tired, still wounded, but no longer exposed, no longer hunted. Elias felt something settle in his chest. "You can rest," he said. "I'll take the floor." She looked shocked. "No, you gave me your coat. I cannot take your bed too." Elias shrugged. "Humans are stubborn," she almost smiled. While she rested, Elias checked his communicator. Messages flooded in, official warnings, informal threats, and dozens of private messages from other humans on the station. "Saw what you did. Good job. About time someone stood up. If you need backup, we're here." Elias stared at the screen. Humans were watching. Elsewhere on the station, the mood shifted. Some aliens were angry, others were uneasy. A few felt something unfamiliar, shame. Station officials convened an emergency meeting. The incident had gone viral beyond Carthvel. Other stations were sharing it. Commentators debated it, not about Sereny, about the human. Why would he risk himself for her? Back in the room, Sereny woke from a shallow sleep. She saw Elias sitting by the window, staring out at the stars. "Human Elias?" she asked softly. "Yes." "Why do humans help strangers?" Elias thought for a long time. "Because once," he said slowly, "we were strangers in a hostile universe too, and someone helped us. We didn't forget." She watched him quietly. On her world, strength meant dominance. Survival meant cruelty. But this human strength was different. It protected instead of destroyed. She held the coat closer around herself, not just for warmth, but for what it represented. Outside the room, footsteps approached. Security, station authority. Elias heard them too. He stood up calmly. "Looks like the hard part starts now," he said. Sereny's heart raced. "I will leave. I won't let them punish you." Elias shook his head. "No, if they want answers, they'll get them." The door chimed. Elias opened it. Two station officers stood there, tense and uncertain. Behind them, a drone hovered, recording. "Elias Ward," one officer said. "You are requested for questioning." Elias nodded. "I expected that." He stepped forward, then paused. "She stays," he said firmly. "She's under my protection." The officers exchanged looks. Protection. That single word echoed far beyond the corridor. Across the station, across the network, across the galaxy, a human had made a choice. And now, everyone would see what followed when humans decided that some lines should never be crossed. The corridor outside Elias' quarters felt narrower than before. The station officers stood stiffly, their posture formal but uncertain. They were used to authority, to rules that bent quietly in dark corners. They were not used to humans who refused to step aside. "She is under my protection," Elias repeated, his voice calm but firm. The officers hesitated. One of them glanced at the recording drone, then back at Elias. "This situation has drawn attention," the officer said carefully. "You will come with us. The alien girl will be processed." Sereny stiffened behind Elias. The word processed made her chest tighten. It sounded clean, final. "No," Elias said. "It was a simple word, clear, unmoving." "She goes nowhere without me," he continued. "And if you try to take her, this stops being quiet." The officers exchanged another look. They were not afraid of Elias as an individual. They were afraid of what he represented, of the attention already building. "Very well," the first officer said at last. "Both of you will come." They walked together through the station, escorted but not restrained. Sereny kept close to Elias, her steps light and careful. She felt eyes on her everywhere, some cold, some curious, some thoughtful. They entered a wide chamber used for hearings and disputes. Transparent walls revealed observers gathering outside. Officials sat behind a raised table, their expressions guarded. "This is unnecessary," one official said. "The matter could have been resolved quietly." Elias looked directly at them. "Quietly for who?" Silence followed. "You interfered in a sanctioned public action," another official said. "That has consequences." Elias nodded. "So does letting a crowd humiliate someone." The officials shifted uncomfortably. Sereny stood straighter. For the first time, she did not feel small. "You accuse my people of war crimes," she said suddenly, her voice trembling but clear. "But you punish me for existing. Is that justice?" The room grew very still. Her words were being recorded, transmitted, watched. One official leaned forward. "Your presence causes unrest. The station must maintain order." Elias stepped closer to the table. "Order built on cruelty doesn't last." Outside the chamber, more humans had gathered. Engineers, medics, pilots, dock workers. They watched the live feed on shared displays, their expressions hardening. Humanity had learned something the hard way across centuries of conflict. If you allow injustice because it's convenient, it eventually knocks on your own door. A human woman in a maintenance uniform spoke quietly to those around her. "If they take her, they'll do it again. Just quieter next time." Heads nodded. Inside the chamber, the officials conferred among themselves. They had not expected resistance, not like this. "You are a guest here," one of them said to Elias. "Do not forget your place." Elias smiled thinly. "That's the problem. Too many people forget others have one too." A warning tone sounded through the chamber. An aide hurried in and whispered to one of the officials. Color drained from his face. "The footage has reached external networks," the aide said. "Several human embassies are requesting clarification." Now the room shifted. Diplomacy entered like a shadow. Sarani watched the officials carefully. She saw fear there now, not of violence but of consequence. "What do you want?" an official asked Elias. Elias did not answer immediately. He looked at Sarani. She hesitated, then spoke. "I want to live without being hunted," she said simply. "I want to work, I want safety." The words were small, but the silence that followed was heavy. "That is complicated," an official said. "No," Elias replied, "it's basic." More alerts sounded, more messages arriving. Human representatives were not alone. Other species had begun to speak as well. Some quietly admitted discomfort. Others openly questioned the station's practices. The officials realized too late that this was no longer about one alien girl. It was about a system exposed under bright light. "We will grant temporary protection," the lead official said slowly. "Under human supervision." Sarani's breath caught. Elias nodded once. "That's a start." The chamber doors opened. The crowd outside murmured as the decision spread. Sarani felt dizzy, relief mixed with fear. Protection was temporary, hate was not. As they left the chamber, a group of humans fell into step beside Elias. No words were exchanged. None were needed. Later, back in Elias' quarters, Sarani finally allowed herself to sit fully. Her hands shook. "You challenged them," she said. "They could have punished you." Elias shrugged. "They still might." She looked at him. "Then why?" Elias leaned against the wall, thoughtful. "Because once, humans were treated like threats just for existing beyond our world. We remember how that felt." Sarani studied his face. "Your kind carries memory like a weapon." "More like a promise," Elias said. Across the station, reactions continued to spread. Some aliens avoided human sectors now. Others approached cautiously, curious rather than hostile. The market square where Sarani had been humiliated stood quiet, cleaned, watched, but the memory remained. That night, Sarani dreamed of her homeworld, of open skies and gentle winds. She woke with tears on her face. Elias noticed. "You're safe," he said quietly. "For now," she replied. "Yes," he agreed. "But now you're not alone." The station lights dimmed to night cycle. Outside the window, stars burned cold and distant. Elsewhere in the galaxy, the footage continued to play. A human covering an alien with his coat. A human standing firm before authority. A question began to spread among those who watched. If humans were willing to protect the weakest, what would they do if pushed further? And for the first time, many realized the answer might not be something they wanted to test. The station entered a strange calm after the hearing. It was not peace. It was tension holding its breath. Sarani noticed it first. The way conversation stopped when she walked past. The way some aliens turned away quickly while others looked at her with quiet curiosity. No one threw garbage anymore. No one shouted, but the fear had not vanished, it had only changed shape. Elias noticed something else. Humans were no longer staying silent. In workshops, in medical bays, in docking corridors, humans talked openly now. Not with anger, but with clarity. They shared the footage. They shared stories of similar moments they had witnessed and ignored in the past. "We won't ignore it again," became an unspoken rule. Sarani began working with Elias in the engineering section. She was careful at first, unsure of her place, but she learned quickly. Her hands were steady, her mind sharp. "She's good," one technician muttered one day, surprised. Sarani heard it. For the first time in many cycles, she smiled without fear. But not everyone was pleased. A small group of station elites saw the change as a threat. Their power relied on silence, on rules that only applied to some. A protected refugee shattered that balance. They planned quietly. The moment came during a station-wide systems test. Power flickered, doors locked. Alarms sounded briefly, then stopped. Too controlled to be an accident. Security moved toward the human sector. Sarani felt it in her chest before she heard the footsteps. "Elias," she whispered. "Something is wrong," he nodded. "I know." The corridor filled with armed station guards, not official security but contracted enforcers. Their leader stepped forward. "This protection arrangement ends now," he said flatly. "Hand over the alien." Sarani froze. Elias stepped forward instead. "No," the leader scoffed. "You think your kind will save you again?" Elias tapped his communicator once. That was all. Across the station, human systems woke up. Engineers rerouted power. Pilots locked docking clamps. Medics sealed corridors. Humans did not attack. They did not shout. They simply refused to cooperate. The station slowed to a crawl. "What are you doing?" the guard demanded. Elias met his gaze. "Showing you something you forgot." Screens flickered on along the corridor walls. Live feeds appeared, humans standing still, tools down, arms crossed. Non-humans watched too, confused, uneasy. "Humans don't rule through fear," Elias said calmly. "We rule through choice, and right now we're choosing not to let you hurt her." The guards hesitated. This was not rebellion, this was something worse. Unified refusal. Station officials rushed in moments later, panicked. "Stand down," one shouted. "This has gone too far." Elias didn't move. "It went too far when you let a crowd strip someone in public." Silence followed. Sarani stepped forward, her voice shaking but clear. "I will leave the station," she said, "if that restores your order." Elias turned sharply. "No," she looked up at him. "I don't want more people hurt because of me." Elias softened. "This isn't because of you. This is because of who they chose to be." An older station official stepped forward slowly. His voice was tired. "We built this place claiming fairness," he said, "but we allowed cruelty because it was easy." He looked at Sarani. "You deserve protection and a place." The guards lowered their weapons. The emergency ended without violence, without blood, without destruction. And that terrified many more than chaos ever could. In the cycles that followed, changes came fast. Public punishments were banned. Refugee status laws were rewritten. Mixed species oversight councils formed, humans included. Sarani received official work clearance, a small living space, safety. But more than that, she received something she never expected: belonging. On her last evening before moving into her own quarters, she stood with Elias by the station window. Stars stretched endlessly beyond the glass. "I was taught humans were dangerous," she said quietly. Elias smiled faintly. "We are," she tilted her head. "But not in the way they said." "No," he agreed. "When humans decide something is wrong, we don't stop." She held his coat, now cleaned and carefully folded. "May I keep this?" Elias laughed softly. "I think it found a better owner." She bowed her head in gratitude. Across the galaxy, the footage became something else entirely. Not just a viral clip, a lesson, a reminder. When humans see injustice, they don't look away. They step forward, they cover the vulnerable. And they remind the universe that true strength is not how much suffering you can cause, but how much cruelty you refuse to allow.